What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 87 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, the weekly video game podcast where three best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Peter Messi, joined as always by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Radford
Hello, hello.
and Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, ahoy.
What are you doing over there? You scratching your shirt?
It's not, it looks like I've got something on my shirt and I don't want that to come up
I
in the
literally
video.
couldn't even tell.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I gotta say, you just brought so much more attention to it by awkwardly
Everyone's
just
like
pointing
staring
at
at
it.
your chest.
Eye contact with it ever since we sat down earlier and I was like, oh, I meant to get rid of that. So
Well, at
It's
least
not
everybody
nefarious.
really definitely got their attention drawn to it now. So I hope that makes
there we
you
go.
feel good.
Pause
Problem
the
solved.
video if you're watching on YouTube, zoom in, enhance
Zoom.
on Max's shirt, and Photoshop something there, and then post it in Discord so people then can find out what was actually on Max's shirt. That's
Be a
that's
weekly
the
segment.
challenge for
Be a
listeners.
weekly
That's the
segment.
weekly
What's
chat.
on Max's shirt?
We'll start doing a weekly Photoshop challenge. I'm in. But anyway, we've got a lot of show ahead of us. We're gonna kick things off with a little Xbox talk. Of course, last week, Redfall was making headlines for all the wrong reasons again, which is unfortunate because this is a game I've very much been looking forward to, and it feels like it just cannot catch a break. Redfall is apparently not going to launch with a 60 FPS performance mode. We got word from Arcane that the game is going to have a quality only mode at launch, right, which is 4K 30 FPS, and that even if you're playing on the most powerful console in the world, as Xbox loves to tout, the Xbox Series X, you're going to have to wait for that 60 FPS performance mode. While players on PC will be able to at least take advantage of 60 FPS, provided that your rig is able to keep up. This is a huge bummer. And, obviously we've gotten a couple stories like this as of late that got negative press. But I think for this game, it feels particularly bad to me
Yeah.
because. Oh, no, go ahead. Jump in, Max.
I was going to say that the week before, or I think it was maybe earlier in the week, IGN came out with like an exclusive, like we've played the game, here's some gameplay, and the person that was playing it wasn't very good at it, probably because it was their first time playing. Absolutely okay, but for your marketing, the only bit it's an exclusive like reveal or exclusive gameplay. For it to not look very good because the person playing it isn't very good, that's not a good look. And then to come out and then like not even soften the blow with anything else, to immediately follow that with, oh hey guys, that game that you didn't think looked good last week, it's also going to only run at 30 FPS. There's no like good news to buffer that. Like, oh hey, just so you know, we're doing like exclusive skins on launch, but also it's 30 FPS. They just came out and raw dogged that information. Just like put it on a platter for no.
You gotta imagine they didn't think it would be that there would be as visceral a reaction, because I think you're right. Like, I think if I'm in PR there, I would be like, look, we gotta have like a date on this. We gotta have something. We gotta be able to soften this blow a little bit, because it just felt like, especially when you put in the context of the fact that like this game is supposed to be this is like the first big $70 next/current gen, however you want to clarify it, exclusive from Xbox Studios, and it's not at 60 FPS on their big flagship console. Like that sucks. And then this game is coming out, a week after Jedi, or maybe 10 days, I think, after Jedi Survivor, and then Tears of the Kingdom comes out another week later.
Yeah.
That's
just
rough.
Yeah, the fact that it's on Game Pass as well means people are going to be like, I'll just wait. I'll wait until the performance mode comes out, which means those first week sales or those first week plays are going to probably not look great, or there's not going to be a great retention rate because people start it for free on Games Pass and they go, all right, I'll just wait till the performance mode comes out, or okay, I'm still playing Jedi Survivor, or Tears of the Kingdom's out in a bit, I'll just not play. And I think those numbers aren't going to look great for Xbox. I think Arcane are going to suffer for it. I think the heads up at Xbox is probably going to say, circumstances notwithstanding, there's also these numbers just don't look good for you. And I think it's
I gotta wonder what's happened here. Like, I really don't understand it. It feels like it's been pushed out the door because they needed something to fill in the Starfield gap at this point, and I think it's even worse because this isn't really an Xbox Studios game. This was one that was acquired. It's being published by Bethesda, which is running as their own entity. And this is like the first fruits of that acquisition that we're seeing, and the fact that they have advertised this. And I went back and I double checked. The official gameplay deep dive from 2 months ago is in 60 FPS. It's
Yeah.
11 minutes of them playing the game at 60 frames per second. And to then come out and say, on the only console this is launching on, you're only going to be able to play at half of that. I can't comprehend this
I
decision
mean,
and why it's even happening.
it's like I said, it feels like they're trying to push, like they're not trying to, like they're going to push this game out to die, which really sucks. Because I mean, granted, it has a multiplayer element. It obviously can always have a chance to come back and get more attention later. But like first impressions are everything, and I having this game come out in this like in a non-feature complete way in this context, I think is a bad look for Xbox. But to Max's point, it's a worse look for the game, which has already struggled to, I think, properly communicate what the experience is, right? Like I've always been
Do you
interested
think
in this
that's
game.
on the games? I don't think that's the game's fault, though. I think that's Bethesda Softworks and
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Microsoft is at fault.
It's
I don't.
marketing.
But I felt like I had a similar reaction to Arcane's presentation of Deathloop, and I didn't fully understand that game and what it was until we saw hands-on reviews of that
Yeah,
game.
the
And I feel
reviews.
like maybe Redfall's probably going to be the same
I think that's the
situation
thing,
here.
though, right? And like that's all well and good, right? Like I was interested in Redfall because I'm an Arcane fan, right? And like the idea, I like the idea of a vampire, survival, like Far Cry-esque open world game, which now that previews have come out, that sounds like what the game is actually like. Is like it's more akin to Far Cry than it is like a Left 4 Dead or a Borderlands 2, which when the game was first shown off, a lot of people were kind of like, oh, like, is it more this? Is it more that? And I think the fact that the game was just starting to get its feet underneath it in terms of its messaging and what kind of game it is and why you should be excited for it and why it's one of the Xbox games you should be looking forward to this year. And then it's like this comes out and it feels like this took all the oxygen right back out of the room for it.
Mhm.
And again, now it's in this situation where like it's sandwiched between these two games that, are not only sequels to really successful games, they're also attached to really, really major IP. And this is a brand new IP and it's on the third most popular console. Like I recognize that Xbox has had a lot of like big um, you know, delays and that they've been struggling, I think, to get big AAA software out and everything. But like, I just really think that they gotta, and I don't know that they will. I think it might be too late, but I feel like they have to recognize that this is not the right environment to release this game in,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah, I I
you're not doing
agree.
it any favors.
This is a huge year for Xbox. I think we've said it before that like we don't really know what Sony have going on right now apart from Marvel. Spider-Man
They got
2.
Spider-Man 2, and I genuinely think that's probably enough for them if
It
Microsoft is
is,
gonna be putting games out in
Yeah.
in poor quality.
Well, that's
And
what I'm
that
saying. Like, this is the perfect
and
time for Xbox to come in with all these sort of, all these acquisitions. People have been saying for ages that they've been acquiring. When's the fruit? When are we going to start sowing? When are we going to start getting the fruits of this? And this is the year, right? Other than Starfield, which has been pushed twice now at this point. It gets further and further away. There just needs to be things to fill in the gaps, keep Xbox players interested, and then when they finally have something like Redfall, there's just every step of the way. It's it's online only. Oh, we don't really know what kind of game it is. Oh no, this is what kind of game it is, but it's only 30 FPS.
I
Oh, don't
forgot
worry,
about
we're
the
going to do
online
this.
only thing, even though you can play it in
Yeah,
single player. That was
and
yeah,
and
bizarre
and
as
that's the
well.
thing is they've also said that they're gonna change that. So like you're talking about this game is gonna become feature complete months after it releases, where you finally get 60 FPS, you get offline mode, and it's like at this point the narrative is
Do you think that
it's
matters?
spun.
Do you think they can recoup that? Because Hitman, for example, the original like 20, I think it was 2016 Hitman was episodic. It wasn't complete for like a year, but it's gone on to have a very, very long shelf life, and people still play that game
Yeah,
now. Do you think the same thing could happen with
it can.
Redfall,
It
where it
can.
sits there, it develops and kind of gets that fan base that people get behind it?
It absolutely could. Game Pass, I think, helps that a lot because you can get into it at any time. But it's like, again, it's like, I think first impressions make a big difference. And I think that if this game comes out If this game came out in the last 4 months, right, in this Q1 when it was quiet as hell, everybody would be playing it and talking about it. And if it came out in the summer, right, like after Jedi
I
and
don't know
Zelda have
about that
already
because
come,
you've got
and
Diablo 4 and you've got Baldur's Gate, and then we've got Starfield coming up. Is it going to be too close to Starfield for them to want to release this?
I mean,
Like, it's
if you
tough.
want
It's a real
if you want to
juggling
hear
act.
my really hot take is I think you delay it till next year, and I don't know how realistic that is financially, but it's like I don't know that there is a good time for it to come out this year, if not, you know, in one of those areas. But to your point, it's gonna have competition no matter where it lands, and if you want to play it, if that's a problem, right, or there is a lot of other stuff going on, and you can't play it as an offline single player game, are you gonna struggle to find 3 friends to squad up and play with you? And again, not that
Mm.
you need it, but, like, if that's the point and you can't get that because there's all these other popular games that are taking away from its attention, and you can't really enjoy it as, like, a single player offline experience quite yet because it's not 60 FPS and it's not available offline, it's like,
I don't
why
know
put
that
it out then? Why
offline.
push it out?
I don't know that offline matters all that much when Game Pass is involved because you need to be connected to the internet to play that anyway.
Mm.
So I can kind
True.
of take that out of the equation somewhat because I think the majority of people that are probably playing this game are going to be playing it through Game Pass on Xbox rather than spending £70 and
I mean
$70 and buying it. Because I feel like why would you spend $70 when you could buy Game Pass for the year for a similar price?
I mean,
You
Xbox
probably
Xbox
wouldn't.
says a lot of people do it anyway, right? Like, so and I think for that person, right? Like if you are the person who was wanted to play it offline and you were going to go buy it for $70 and you don't have Game Pass, you're not going to do that now. So that's
Yeah.
another it's just another thing against it. Whereas if
Yeah.
it comes out later and these things are figured out, it's just one less problem.
Well,
Does
fans seem
does it
to
become
want that, right? I
well?
don't know if you guys saw the Twitter poll where, I mean, it's not official. There's no, it's a person with like 51,000 Twitter followers has done a Twitter poll to say, like, should they delay it or is sort of 30 FPS going to be okay? And 76% of the people, it's only 14,000 people, but you can extrapolate that, I guess, say that they think they
It's not
should
an
delay the game.
insignificant. It's enough of a
No,
sizable amount of people to get a good poll.
yeah, but I do wonder if the poll was skewed a little bit by instead of it saying release the game now, it says 30 FPS is fine in 2023. Like they're not the 2 points don't quite line up, but yeah, I think that the people will obviously be okay with a delay if they have to delay it. It's just where does that fit in? And like you say, it could even be next year is the
But
best
do
time
you think
for it.
people are okay with the delay because they just don't care about the game and like
I
delay
mean,
Redfall because
That
I
could be
don't
it.
know what this game is and I don't really care because the marketing's been terrible on it anyway.
that's the
So
thing though.
Yeah, that could be it.
If that is the case, that's still a good reason to delay it, right?
yeah,
Like that's I think there is no there are several reasons to uh sorry. I don't think there's one good reason to not delay it, right? Every single thing that you said, if that's the problem, if it is that there's not enough buzz and that people don't care, that's a good enough reason to delay it right now, given that this has already happened and it has all these strikes against it, to delay it, go away for a little while, come back and after Starfield and give it another here's your final look at it and it's out soon, and push it
yeah.
that way.
And I actually kind of think that you could own it and just be like, you know what, we've listened. We're gonna take on
Yes.
the
Yeah.
feedback. We're gonna bring not only a 60 FPS mode, but maybe a 40 FPS mode with like ray tracing and quality features, and maybe try and push for 120, which was the kind of vision for the console when they set out was this is going to be a 4K 120. The Series S will be 1440p 120. I think we've got one game from Microsoft, which is Halo, that has a 120 hertz mode. All of the other ones, they either are 30 or 60. Most of them, I think all of them have a 60 FPS mode. This is the first game that has just been 30.
Yeah.
And it's a real loss for them. I think the thing that annoys me most is the fact that all the footage up until this point has been 60, and it's clearly not been running on an Xbox then. It's clearly just been PC footage that
Yeah.
people have been probably presuming that it's running on an Xbox when it's in an Xbox presentation. And you're showing it at an Xbox showcase at 60 FPS. I don't know about you two, but I presume that when you're showing me footage in an Xbox presentation, it's running on an Xbox.
Yeah, or at least they should. If they're not, they should state it. This is PC footage or whatever. Like it shouldn't be. Even if it says this is development footage. All right, cool. Where is that development footage being played? Is this? Can I expect better than this? Then if this is development
That's
footage,
something that PlayStation has got really good at of late in their presentations. It will say captured on a PS5, captured
Yeah.
on a PC. And because they know that some of their games have come to PC, some of the games are PS5 only. There's even screenshots on Steam of The Last of Us where it says captured on a PS5 and it's a screenshot of the PS5 and they've just put it up there and it's full transparency. I think that's what I want. I'm glad that they revealed this ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
but the fact that they
Yeah, but
have
it's
to
so
still
close to
sucks.
release at this point that I think like, yeah, it's great that they told us now, I guess, rather than when it comes out, but like I feel like if they had communicated this months ago, it would be a much less bad look. The game is out soon. And I know personally, I was very much looking forward to this game. And I feel like I could very easily see myself falling into the category that Max described of I'm still working on Jedi. And I'm like, well, do I really want the one? Because like, I don't know that I'm going to replay this game. I might only play it once. So if I'm only going to play it once, I may as well wait until it's 60 FPS because
Yeah.
like, it's not like all my friends are going to be playing it at launch anyway. So
That's
like,
where I'm at. Like, and for me though, it's not that I'm playing Jedi. It's that 10 days after this, Tears of the Kingdom launches, and I'm not
I
going to
mean, it's
get through an
both.
open world FPS in 10 days. What's the point in me even
Yeah.
picking it up? Because I know as
Yeah.
soon as Tears of the Kingdom comes out, I'm not going to want to go back to Redfall. I'm going to want to
Yeah.
be
You're gonna
exploring
forget where
around
you are. You're
in
gonna
Yeah.
Hyrule.
Yeah.
Yeah. All your friends are
Yeah.
gonna have either if you were playing with people, they're gonna have moved on, or by the time you finally get to it, people aren't gonna be interested anymore, or it's just impossible to line that up. Um,
I
Yeah.
mean,
in
I
the
plan
place
to
of
play
this.
this single player. That was going to be because I mostly play games single player.
Mhm.
So the co-op thing is less of an issue for me, and I could do you know what, I could even understand if it was when you're playing co-op it's 30, when you're playing single player it's 60 because there's
Yeah.
like more involved
There's
with the
so many
multiplayer.
compromises that would feel better than this.
Yeah, like
Or if it was 30. And here's the other elephant in the room, right? We've talked about this a lot. Series S. I bet you that's a big part of the problem.
Yeah.
I don't know about that because they have had games run at 30 with just a quality mode or a performance mode on the Series S. Halo
Sure.
Infinite's one of them, and then there is the performance mode that gets to like 120 on the
Mm.
Series X. So I think that's okay. It's whether it's like feature complete because that's the issue that
Mm.
they've
But
got
that's
is
the thing is what if part of the problem is that you can't well, I don't know. I don't know. I guess you're right though.
Can
Because
I
if there was a go ahead, Max. Go ahead.
I was gonna say what you said there about the Series S being an issue. I don't know if you guys have seen. I literally added this just before we went live. That Ghostwire Tokyo Digital Foundry have sort of done like a preview of their testing on the Xbox because it was a PS5 exclusive for however long it's been, like a year. And there is so neither of the modes on Series S have ray tracing, which is fine. That makes sense. But the performance mode on Series S runs sub 60 FPS, so they can't even get like a 60 FPS performance mode for what was the game I said a minute ago?
Ghostwire Tokyo.
Ghostwire
Ghostwire
Tokyo.
Tokyo. Yeah, that they can't even get a 60 FPS performance mode out of that on the Series S, and that the game overall, even on the Series X, is worse than the PS5. But I do wonder if the Series S is part of that problem, like you say.
I honestly think running at sub 60 is fine. I would have preferred them to cap it at 40. The Xbox has a very robust VRR solution, supported AMD FreeSync out of the box. I think that's fine personally. But the fact that a Series X performance is 5 to 10% lower than the PS5 on average, when it's a console that it's their own console. It's owned by Microsoft. This is now a Microsoft studio. The fact that they've had, I mean, when did this game come out? It was like two
They had about
years
a year.
ago.
They had a year to
It was
work on it.
it was a year ago. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
but like surely
they've had a
like
year
during
to work
development.
on it, and I don't know.
I mean,
It's
but
again another bad look for them, especially when they still hail their console as the most powerful console, and that is
and
their tagline.
and that's the thing though, right? Is like again, maybe it's ignorant to point to the Series S as the problem, but I think it has to at least be part of the problem. Like, was a year enough for them to make multiple stable SKUs on two different boxes? But maybe not, because like that's the thing is like it is like you're talking about, yeah, okay, it runs on 2 consoles, but they also have multiple modes then they have to come out with, right? Because like each one has
But
different resolution
honestly,
and
like, I
different.
think
It's
it
not a
would have
lot of
been
time for
fine.
optimization.
I think it would have been fine to release the Series S version and just be like, Series S runs at 30, Series X runs at 60. I think
Yeah,
people could have accepted that. But it's the
but
fact that the performance is lower than the PS5 on
right.
average
And it's like,
anyway.
does Microsoft is Microsoft okay with that? And I wonder if that's part of the equation. You know, we've heard
Mm.
statements from disgruntled developers who are frustrated by Microsoft's attitude that it needs to have a level of parity that holds things back. I don't know. You know,
It's really getting silly at this point. Like the biggest exclusive we've had of the last year, like in the last 12 months, is Hi-Fi Rush, and that seemingly came out came out with a bang, but it's fizzled out now. It was a small title. People have kind of moved on from it and forgotten about it. The next big title, Redfall, has had all number of issues of it, and it, it doesn't give me much confidence for Starfield in having a
nope.
performance mode
No.
or it
I
coming
bet
out and it not being a total mess.
I regret not having it on my predictions list that Starfield would run at 30 FPS because I am very
Yeah.
confident that's going to
We
happen.
didn't know. We didn't know at the time, did we really?
No, we didn't, but like damn. Like I just can't I can't see that not being the case. I hope I'm wrong. I really
No,
do.
you're not wrong. No way you're wrong. Like that game is gonna run at 30. Like all of the games on the last generation, all of the Bethesda titles ran at 30. They only came to 60 when they came to the new generation of consoles. I think Skyrim got a 60 FPS mode on PS5, but that was on PS4, but that was a PS3 game. It's like they target 30, and then when the next generation comes out, they use that to just plow through with higher frame rate.
So, I mean, before we move on from this, I guess what how do we feel about this? Like, what's going on at Xbox? Because like I'm at a point where I feel like this is starting to shake my confidence in them a little bit in terms of their ability to shepherd these big AAA projects the way they need to. Because like I think when you look at the smaller stuff they've put out, I think it's been almost exclusively successful. Obviously there's been indies that they've partnered with for Game Pass that have like not been great or whatever, like 12 minutes looking at you. But like the stuff that they've actually developed in house, like Psychonauts, like Pentiment,
Mhm.
like Hi-Fi Rush, like As Dusk Falls, right? Like bangers, lots and lots of bangers of really great, exceptional indie games on Game Pass. But when you look at the AAA side of things, it's a you know, I mean, the ones that have come out, right, have almost all suffered delays. And then, like, you know, we talked about Halo. I loved Halo at launch, but where is it now? The post launch support was just not there. And, you know, yeah, they're finally getting their house in order with season 3 and, you know, they're trying to get players back. But that comes back to the thing we talked about with Redfall earlier, where like it's a lot harder to get people back than it is to get them to stay.
Yeah.
And I I gotta say, like, I'm at a point where, you know,
I think though with that they could do the relaunch thing, and it's the argument you used with multiverses when we discussed it last week, right? Is
sure.
that you kind of shut down Halo, you put it on life support, let Halo Infinite just kind of coast on by, and then do that big relaunch. And I think they probably could do that, but I think that needs to be
Yeah.
next year, and they need to spend the next year tidying that game up and kind of getting it out the gate. This year is really Bethesda's year. That and Forza Motorsport are the three big games, right?
Yeah.
We've got Redfall, Starfield, and Forza Motorsport.
Which is why, like,
I have total confidence in Turn 10 to produce a really great game. I don't have much confidence in Bethesda anymore.
Yeah, it's a shame.
It's a real shame. Like it's just been. I mean, the last big game from Bethesda was Fallout 76,
Mm.
and that wasn't well received. I really can't believe that Starfield is going to come out and be everything that everyone wants it to be at this
And
point.
Starfield
I
isn't
don't
really isn't
I don't
wowing
know.
from like I have not I'm yet to see many people who every time they show off a Starfield trailer, it's not the same reaction to like Breath of the Wild, so Tears of the Kingdom where everyone's like, "Oh wow, this is
See,
exactly what I wanted and we've been so quiet."
I don't quite agree with that because I don't think we've seen enough of it to really pass that judgment on it. I feel like right now, um, and don't get me wrong, right? Like you can cut this out, anybody, right? Save it and throw it in my face when Starfield comes out, and if it's
Please
not
do.
good. But to me, the conversation around Starfield feels a lot like the conversation before Breath of the Wild launched about Breath of the Wild. I think it's very easy to forget, right, what that looked like at the time. I remember in 2016 when, back check me on the year there, but I believe I'm right. That was E3's presentation where basically the only thing they had to show was Breath of the Wild.
That was
And that
2016,
was
yes.
right before it came out in 2017. And I remember the conversation around that at that time. And I remember watching that footage and being like, is this going to be good? Is this going to be fun? And people being like, oh, weapon degradation? That sounds awful. And this and that. And that's not what we want from Zelda. There's no dungeons. And obviously, once you get your hand on the actual product and you play it and you see not only how good it feels to play and all that stuff, but you get that sense of like, oh, like this is what this game actually is, right? If they talk too much about Starfield before it comes out, it loses that mystique. It loses that water cooler moment of you getting there and being and discovering things. And then we come on the podcast and I've played for 3 hours. I've played for 5. I've played. How far did you get? Oh, did you see this thing? Did you see that? Like that's what they want. And that at its peak, that's what Bethesda does well, is the water cooler stuff, is the you having those moments in Skyrim, in Fallout or whatever that feel like tailored to you, or that feel like,
I feel like
you were
most of those
rewarded for
moments are
that
scripted
exploration.
though, and the size and scope of Starfield scares me. You've also got to remember we saw Breath of the Wild when it was just called The Legend of Zelda for Wii U back in 2014, and we
Sure. But
saw
again, that wasn't
Miyamoto.
really anything.
Well, I don't know. We had like a 5-minute glimpse of it at the Game Awards. We saw the visual style of it. We saw the interactions with the Wii U gamepad,
We saw the
and it was the
Guardians and all
last
of that sort of
game.
stuff quite
Yeah,
early.
we saw a fair chunk of that game, and it was the last game that came out on that system. And really, it was the launch pad for the Nintendo Switch that everyone was excited about. By the time that they showed that, we'd had a whole other console, and by the time we got it, I I you got to imagine that was delay after delay after delay that
Yeah, I
that
mean that game
caused
was
that.
delayed multiple times. That's my whole point. Is that I think
And
it's
and I
it's
would rather
easy to
they
be
continued
trepidatious
to
about
do that.
Starfield now, and we might, when it comes across, it might actually be what we want it to be. It might be the second coming. But I think the fact that it has that expectation on it, you're very right, Steve. That like that's very easy to fumble, right? Like the fact that it has to be if this game is anything less than generation defining, it's going to be a disappointment. And
Yeah, it's
that's,
gotta be the next Skyrim for them.
yeah,
That's what
exactly.
this
And
game has
like
to be.
to like do I don't know, right? Like it's like do I think Bethesda can't do that? Not necessarily. Like I think they're totally capable of it. They've done it before multiple times, right? But they also, to your point, the last two at bats have not been huge wins, and this game's been in development a really long time, and there's a chance it comes out and feels dated. There's a chance it comes out and is just okay, and that won't be enough. But I don't know. I think I really hesitate, to think like what that looks like for Xbox if they send Redfall out to die and then Starfield doesn't live up to the hype. It's like at that point, I think the narrative around you know, their success and their ability to buy these studios and shepherd them and be this landing place for create it's like it's going to be a big black eye on their currently very very pristine uh like face this generation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that everyone thinks they do have a very pristine face. I think a lot of people are very disappointed in the number of exclusives that have come to Xbox. It's been very few and far
Oh
between.
yeah, I mean, I feel like every year Xbox fans are like, this is our year, this is the one, this is
Yeah.
where it's all gonna, as you said, this is where it's all
I
gonna bear
mean,
fruit, and it just hasn't.
think back to like what was the year that they had? It was like the best lineup games on Xbox ever, and it had like Scalebound, and it had Fable Legends or whatever that game was called, and it was like they had that big marketing campaign of all of these games, and two of them never arrived. Some of them launched broken. That was like 20, I want to say 15. I remember going to
Yeah, I
EGX
mean,
in
the
Birmingham, and it was like,
Xbox One
bang.
era was an absolute
But
mess. I
every
don't
year
think we can really look at that.
every
But you're
year we've
right.
been waiting for that.
Yeah.
We've been waiting for they've acquired the studio, great, okay. And they had the year that they released Ori and the Will of the Wisps, it's like, great. They bought Moon Studio, they released a great game, cool. Where's the rest of them? Where's the announcements? Every single E3, we wait for Xbox to announce, like, okay, here's the latest Bethesda game, here's the latest, like, all of this new stuff. And that has started to happen. Now the games are starting to come out, and actually, some of these things were like, has it been worth the wait? Has it been worth the money for Xbox? Has it been worth them owning Bethesda and Bethesda not doing its own thing and being its own uh, entity for these games? And so far, I think we're still being proved that that's not the case. Like, Hellblade 2. They announced Hellblade 2 like 2 or 3 years ago. We saw footage of it, like a trailer for it 2 years ago. Nothing. And that's one of the games that I've always been like, yeah, Xbox, they're doing shit. They've got Ninja Theory, they're releasing this game. The game's just never come out. We've just never seen it. There's no news on it.
Yeah, I don't
Release
think that one's
games.
coming. That one's not coming this year, I don't think,
No,
unless that's a shadow drop in summer.
I highly doubt it.
Because that's shifted to Unreal Engine 5 now that we saw that at the Epic Games presentation. I'm looking over their like next 12 months thing that they had when they did their presentation in
I remember
June
it.
last year.
And they've
And
already
like
like
you
missed a couple of those deadlines, right? So it's
Yeah, they've missed a couple of the deadlines. You look at some of the titles that are on here that have come out, they like, or that hadn't come out at that point, like Gotham Knights, Wolong, Fallen Dynasty. Some of these games that they were touting as like going to be big titles for their console. Arc 2's not coming till next year. Some of these are just like
Where's
they were
Silksong?
absolute duds,
Where's
or they've just
Silksong?
not come out. Silk Song was not on this list,
Was it
unfortunately.
not? Oh,
No,
I
it
thought it
was
was.
not.
I thought it was part of the list. Oh, I've
no,
been
I think that was
misled.
the more recent thing that they did.
No, that was E3 last year. I was in an airport watching it. And I'm pretty sure they said every single game in this thing is going to be out in the next 12 months. And we saw Silksong,
You're
and I
no,
was like,
you're right about
cool.
that. I just
Ah,
the Hollow Knight, the Silk Song thing was, I think, an unrelated event.
oh, okay, fine.
Yeah. But like
But
last year was their big thing where they had we finally saw Starfield. We saw Kojima there. So like they do have a lot of things
That
in the
was the
works, but
same.
that's always how I feel about Xbox is there's always a lot of things in the works. It's coming soon. I'm really excited about what's coming, but it
yeah,
never seems to come. It never
well,
does.
and it's
Aha,
like,
here we
again,
go.
like, I know that they have so many things in development, and like game development takes longer than it used to. Like, we have like Avowed, right? Like, um there's a lot of other like big Fable, right? Like things like that that we know are being worked on, but it's like, who knows how long away they are. And it's like, are they going to hit, right? Like something like Perfect Dark with like the Coalition, and then now that team is not what it used to be, and they have a support studio coming
Oh
in,
yeah, I
and
forgot about that.
and it's just, I don't know.
First
Like
quadruple A studio.
I
Where's all
worry
that
about,
money gone?
yeah. I mean, it's a good
So,
question, and I
sorry,
worry
go
about
on.
their ability to manage all of these studios. Because
Yeah,
it feels like it's
which was
getting
the whole
messy.
point, right? It was the whole point of keeping Bethesda as their own entity. They kind of ZeniMax stays, they look after their own studios, but they all report to Phil Spencer. And then, Xbox would have someone underneath Phil that would be like managing those Xbox studios that would then be reporting to Phil, and he'd oversee the whole of Xbox. And the same thing with Activision, if that acquisition goes through, is they would remain their own thing and they would then report to Phil Spencer. So it would be like these three sub companies underneath Xbox. So far, it's not really been shown to be working. The stuff coming out of Bethesda that we've seen, it's been few and far between, and is now launching with a lot of problems. And it remains to be seen if
Well,
Starfield will be a big success. But
yeah, and I'd say it remains to be seen if they're launching with a lot of problems either, right? Like, it's
well,
like,
it's launching with a lot of controversies then,
sure,
because obviously the 30 FPS stuff, they're always online. Or their games being ported to Xbox and running it in an inferior quality to they do on their competing console.
yeah, that's not a great look. I will say though, it's also, I think, an interesting thing when you get down to it, though, right? Of the idea of like, oh, they acquired Bethesda and like what's coming from that and everything, like, but it's also like that only happened 2 years ago. Like, 2 years is not a long time to see something come from that kind of acquisition, right? Like, when you think about it, in that time, they've released 3 games, right? If you count Deathloop. because that came out that year. But it's like, if you don't count Deathloop, right? If you count everything that came out post acquisition, it's Ghostwire Tokyo, right? Which was an exclusive on another console, no less, because again, that pre-existed the acquisition. It's Hi-Fi Rush, which arguably maybe they made that smaller project because of Game Pass and because of that acquisition, and that was something they put together in 2 years, right? Maybe that's the case. And then it's Redfall and it's Starfield. So, these are supposed to be the two, I think, proofs of concept. These are supposed to be this is showing you that we're here and that next gen has come and that these are the big $70 games that you're going to want to buy on the best console in the world. And, I hope that we feel that way by the end of the year, but I don't know. And I wonder if something like Starfield is going to look not if it's going to struggle next to Tears of the Kingdom, if it is going to look unfavorable against some of those other games that come out this year. I hope not, but yeah, I don't know. It definitely doesn't inspire a ton of confidence. And I say that as somebody who really wants both of these games to be great.
Yeah,
and to be 10 out of 10s, and especially Starfield needs to be a 10 out of 10. And yeah, I hope it is, but it's going to be an interesting fall.
I've just sent a picture to you guys of Xbox saying that Silksong would be out in the next 12 months.
Okay.
But
But was that in June, though?
Yeah, June 12th, 2022. Everything you're seeing today is playable over the next 12 months. Someone replied saying, "So you're telling me Silksong is out within the next 12 months?" They said that's exactly what we said, and it's
Okay.
not going to happen. We're not going to see that game by June 12th, 2023.
You don't think so? You don't think that's a shadow drop at their presentation in June?
I just don't think you show so little of that game.
Why? You don't need to show anything of that game.
Yeah,
you can literally just have the title of that game and people will be like crazy for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those titles where the more you show of it, the more damage you do to it. You want to keep it
Think
under
about
wraps
Tears of the
and just have it
Kingdom.
come
Like,
out.
we saw nothing about that until this week's trailer that we're going to talk about on Nintendo Noise, but
Yeah.
that was like I was not hyped for it really until the last couple of weeks.
I've been saying that for months, right? Where it's like, oh, we got to get a big deep dive. When are they going to show us more? And it's like, they don't need to show us more. It's a sequel to the most successful game on the console, right?
But they did. Pete, they did.
Yeah, well, they did.
Yeah,
They showed us. They showed us about this much,
and it's enough. I feel more at peace than I did before, but whatever.
That's cool. I'm glad. I'm just saying. It's like there's certain games you just don't need to show that much, right? It's like we talked about Redfall. That was a Redfall problem. Redfall, you needed to see it. You needed to see a lot more of that game. Whereas like Zelda, the sequel to Breath of the Wild, yeah, okay, come on, we're already in. Starfield, we're already in. Just ship the game, right? We're gonna show up. We'll tell you how it is. So, speaking of telling you how it is, we got a lot more segments ahead of us where we're going to tell you how things are. But before that, let me remind you that this episode of the FlipScreen Games Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of April. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hausmeyer, a.k.a. Sobe, Snacky Go, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. Y'all are the real to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. If you want to show your support and become a Patreon supporter, or write into the show, or come join our Discord where the conversations keep rolling, or you want to just check out some more of our content, you can find links to all that and more over at flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can just, however you want to get involved, go over there, flipscreen.games. You'll find a link. You go click on it. Helps us out. And get you more involved in the community. Win-win, baby. So let's jump into this next one. This is a big story. Sega has acquired Rovio, the company behind Angry Birds, for $775 million, which is quite a bit of money. But it's even more important with this context here that it was an all-cash offer, which is extremely significant, right? Steve, you had the percentage. What is this is like a huge percentage of their cash reserves here, right?
Yeah, so as of 2022, it was reported they had 1.12 billion cash reserves or cash equivalent reserves. So that is the amount they basically have in the bank, or tied up in bonds that they can easily cash in. So it's like over 50%, almost 50% of the money they had in December 2022. I mean, that figure may have gone up, may have gone down. We don't know, but it's a big old chunk of change that they're investing here
Even if it
in
went up by
Rovio.
50%, that would still be like a third of their
Yeah.
cash. It's a lot. It's definitely a really significant amount of money to plunk down.
Yeah, huge stake. I think it shows that they're serious about this acquisition. They've cited a few reasons as to why they want it. Obviously, the Angry Birds IP is one of them. It's a IP that we've known since like 2008. Big on mobile, but also in other mediums. It had an Angry Birds movie. They've got arcade games, and so Sega want to utilize that. And they've spoken about expanding Rovio's and Sega's vibrant IPs. But they also want to utilize the talent that Rovio has. They've said that Rovio is looking to expand its platform outside of mobile gaming, and Sega Corporation will actively look to support this process. So potentially Rovio brings Angry Birds to consoles or to PC, or maybe they're working on another new IP. But they also want to use Rovio to build out, expand Rovio and Sega's IP, and specifically Sonic the Hedgehog, and bringing, utilizing essentially the talent over at Rovio to build games as a service, games on mobile, using Sega's IP, which so I would expect to see a lot of Sonic games coming to mobile in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that's the
Which, I
first
mean,
thing
makes
saw,
sense
sort
when
of.
you think about it too, because it's not like Sega hasn't had mobile efforts in the past. They've put plenty of Sonic games on mobile. They had Sonic 4. They put like every episode on mobile. They just had that new Persona game. That's a mobile Persona 5 like loose tie-in.
Wasn't there a Mega
Um,
Drive collection on the mobile as well at some point? Or there were some Mega Drive games you could play on mobile? I might be making that
that
up,
You
to be
that
could
honest.
play the Sonic games. They were done by Christian Whitehead, who then came on to do
Sonic Mania.
Sonic Mania.
Sonic Mania, but I think there were other games that you could buy. I can't remember now, but I'm pretty sure there were other like Mega Drive games that you could download, and they had the same sort of joystick overlay and stuff. But it was like classic games.
Quite possibly, but I don't think we've seen many mobile exclusive games.
No,
Titles
you're
like
right.
Angry Birds that utilize the medium of the phone and the touchscreen and those kind of primitive controls. We've not really seen any Sonic games like that, and I could
Mhm.
easily see Sonic working as something like that. Like was it Rolando? Do you remember that game where you sort of like tilted your phone and it was sort of like Loco
Oh yeah,
Roco?
yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah,
I could
yeah,
see something like that working for like Sonic, where you're like kind of tilting your phone to go
yeah.
around like the various
I
different
mean,
things.
shit,
Bring
Super Monkey
back
Ball,
the
right?
Chow Garden. Give me a mobile
Yeah.
Chow Garden game,
That would be really
Rovio.
I'm
Come
good.
I'm
Yeah.
on.
I'm pretty sure like one of the first sort of big when sort of iOS became iOS and they released the App Store and you could like you could pretend to drink a pint or play pool or whatever.
Oh
One of the big
God.
ones was
Yeah.
Super Monkey Ball, right? You could play Super Monkey Ball
Yeah.
on your phone and it was all about tilting. Like that was huge on my iPod Touch. I loved that stuff. And yeah, I think that was they were focusing more then. I think maybe now that the market's changed, they've realized, okay, cool. There's maybe not as much money in just releasing games. I think they released about 5 of these classic games, Golden Axe and Kick Chameleon, stuff like this. They haven't done that recently. I think maybe now they've got Rovio, they could be doing, like you say, like entirely new games with their existing IP that work not just for a mobile market, but with a company that knows how to monetize correctly and knows how to, you know, get the right monetary feedback that they want. Monetary feedback, is that a phrase? Have I just made that up? Whatever.
I have
To get the
no
money they want for
idea,
the game.
but
I get
they're
what you
you
mean, though,
know
right? Like, it's like that's a big part of getting mobile games right is making
Mhm.
sure that the price point feels good and that like you're keeping people on the hook enough to keep spending and playing and feeling like they're getting something in return. And you know, obviously Rovio's been around in the space for a long time. We have a note here for part of our show notes here that like they've consistently turned what is it, 270 to 290 million dollars annually since 2017, which is pretty comfortable. The idea that like Sega will seemingly make their investment back in 2 to 3 years, even if business just goes as usual. It seems like a pretty safe acquisition, let alone the fact that, there's obviously value in the Angry Birds IP and the ability for Sega to have a partner that can, hopefully help them find ways to monetize their library in better ways and, take advantage of like kind of the cachet of something like Sonic on mobile, and maybe not even like Steve said, like not just taking existing Sonic the Hedgehog games and putting them on mobile, like being able to take, a new, more mobile centric approach and create something that's like fresh, that's going to speak to that audience and what that audience wants, rather than just leveraging your classic library on yet another platform, which I'm sure has worked out to some degree, but they want to make that Pokemon Go money. They want to make that,
Oh yeah,
Candy
everyone
Crush
does.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah, Candy Crush is the big one that everyone's chasing. It's the reason why Microsoft had to pay so much money
Yeah.
for Activision.
Which
But you look at the Zynga deal as well. They sp- I don't I still kind of think that Take-Two massively overpaid there, $12.7 billion, but that was not an all cash deal. That was a stock swap and cash mix. So shareholders received $3.50 in cash and 0.0406 shares of Take-Two if they owned Zynga stock. But $12.7 billion for the creators of Farmville and Words with Friends versus Angry Birds.
what was last week's Marvel Strike Force and the
I can't
Star Trek
remember.
one? Who owned that
I'll look
and
it up.
what yeah, I wonder what kind of deal that was, whether that, because that was like 6 billion, right? It was like the fifth largest acquisition, but it was from a company we'd never heard of, being owned by a company we've never heard of, and I wonder what the breakdown is there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think mobile's really going to be the next big space where everyone's kind of fighting to own that screen.
Which is so weird because it's a conversation we've had for
Many times it feels like every
decades.
generation we've just been
Yeah.
like, "Oh, mobile's the next place. No one plays consoles
Yeah,
anymore."
like, oh yeah,
That's why
everyone's
I
looking for
don't.
mobile. Yeah, it just keeps coming back. Every time you think, oh, mobile's dead, that Candy Crush is now just played by mums, then the next game comes out and then they're like, oh, maybe mobile. And then that slowly dies out. Like Pokemon Go, when it peaked in 2016, cool mobile. And that still makes a load of money, but it's not in the massive conversation anymore. And then something else comes out that you don't even know is out. You don't even know that Marvel Strike Force is making as much money as it's making. I've never even heard of this Star Trek
Sure.
game that's making loads of money. And all of a
I
sudden,
mean, that's fine. Mobile's got to be the place because Candy Crush Saga, that one game alone, made $607 million last year.
jeez.
See, and that's the thing though, is I don't really think that it's like the next new thing by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's more and more just like it honestly, I think it's less of a trend having to do with mobile and more of a trend having to do with media consolidation and acquisitions in general, which
Yeah.
we know have been on the rise because you look at every one of these companies that we've talked about, with rare exception, at least platform holders will say, right? They've all invested money to varying degrees trying to incubate and create mobile stuff themselves, and to largely not great effect. And I think that's why now you're seeing more of these big companies just acquire mobile studios and make it an arm of their business, right? Where like most people don't think of the fact that King and Candy Crush are owned by Activision Blizzard, right? Because at the end of the day, they're not really the same industry. Like they're tangentially related, sure, right? And they're literally in the same conversation in terms of like when you talk about how much money the video game industry, quote unquote, generates. But I've made this comparison, I think last week, but I know I've made it in the past. I honestly, I think the mobile market is often kind of akin to like the way pornography operates in relation to like film, right? And television, where like uh it is literally in the same industry in the fact that like, in DVD sales, right? Back in the day, we'll say. But they also operate on totally different, like they're marketed differently, they're monetized differently. Who purchases them and why are different, right? Like, and I think that's why you've seen a lot of the efforts from like Nintendo, right? Their more traditional efforts in the mobile space have not been as successful, right? Like Mario Run was a more traditional full priced monetization model,
That
and that
didn't do
didn't
very
work
well. Yeah.
because that's not
Yeah, but they
how people
switched
in
from
that
that
space
model
want to
though.
buy stuff. Well,
They
yeah,
they
no, and
they
then
ex-
they changed it, but that's my point, right? Is like that that more traditional model like didn't apply there. And I think you've seen that with a lot of these companies where they try to come into the mobile space and they just don't really know how to do it. They don't understand the ins and outs in the ways that a Zynga does, in the way that a Rovio does. And I think that's why you see the partnerships like Nintendo investing in DNA and being like, this is our inroad, right? Is getting people who already are established and successful and know how to make a game that's going to make money.
And Nintendo's still at it, even though maybe some of their games haven't sort of done too well and they've shut a few of them down, and there's a couple that are still running, but they've not given up. They've announced another new partnership with DNA, where they're, trying new things and they're expanding into different markets, but it's still a partnership between the two of them to create stuff that is likely gonna be for mobile because that is, such a huge market as we've seen with these acquisitions.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
the one
I
you
mean,
talked about
Pocket
last week
Camp's
was
like it's still going, still developing them revenue, still
so
like
Fire
they've
Emblem
made.
Heroes 2 6 is also
Yes,
very successful.
I mean, they did try with that new IP. God, it always
The
slips out of my mind.
dragons, something dragon lair,
Oh,
some I
Dragalia
can't
Lost.
remember.
Dragalia
Dragalia
Lost.
Lost.
Dragalia
Yeah.
Lost. Can never remember.
They did try with that. PlayStation's also having a go that they've seemingly decided not to bother buying a studio themselves or buy a publisher themselves. They're partnering with smaller studios.
Yet,
This year we saw them release Ultimate Sackboy from Exient Entertainment, who they'd worked with back in 2019 to publish Lemmings on mobile. Um, I could see them continuing down that avenue with Exient, and if it works out, just snapping them up and buying them. They worked on Angry Birds as well. They worked on they created Angry Birds Transformers. They've done like a Top Gear game. So that seems to be the approach that all of these big players are taking. It's just like, well, rather than building the team ourselves, why don't we just spend our cash and snap one up and buy one and just then utilize their talent with the IP that we own to build out something fresh. And it makes sense for Sega, I think. I think this is like a logical next step for them. But I was surprised because we've had the discussion multiple times on the show about Sega potentially being ripe for the picking for someone like Sony or Microsoft to snap up next, because they've kind of been floundering a little bit, but they've got some valuable IP with Persona, with Sonic, and it would really bolster up, especially Microsoft's side, and maybe give them that inroad into the Japanese market. I wonder if that conversation was off the table after the Activision deal kind of pushed forwards, or whether it was never going to happen, and whether Sega want to remain independent.
I mean, this makes me think that they do. I don't remember if Sega had made actions that made us think that they wanted to be acquired, or if we were just thinking that they were a
It
good
was
candidate.
closing the arcades, like de-diversifying
Yes,
themselves
yes,
from
yeah,
that, and
totally.
kind of just like, oh, they're just gonna continue to make games and maybe split off the Sammy side of the business, and they just want to sell the Sega portion.
Right. And yeah, I mean, this makes me think probably not, right? But I don't know. Who knows, right? Like I feel like it's also d- that makes me think that maybe that's not their plan right now, right? But that does that mean that they couldn't be acquired later on? No. I mean, if anything, this probably just makes them more valuable, right? It's just
Yeah, but is it
another.
worth spending $700 million to make yourself a bit more pretty to another person? I don't know.
I
They've
mean,
clearly
that's
got
I guess
plans.
that's the question though, right? Is when, right? Because if the plan is to try to sell Sega in say the next 5 years or so, then
Mhm.
maybe, right? Because it would
Yeah.
take 2 to 3 years for them to make the cash back that they just dropped theoretically based on Rovio's normal profits. So if that holds true, then and maybe they want to sell 2 years later when they've built up another cash reserve and they've released a few new successful mobile games as a part of this partnership. And again, I'm not saying that that's like the long game that they're playing, but say, another couple years rolls by and maybe like, somebody like a Sony or whomever comes knocking because PlayStation has failed to make the mobile jump that they wanted to. And they realize they need to acquire somebody with mobile talent. And also, they happen to have a lot of great, like Atlas stuff is often exclusive to PlayStation, right? Like they already have that association with that brand. Like, who's to say? I don't think that it one necessarily precludes the other, but I would say I think you're probably right about that, Steve. Where like this to me doesn't look like a company that's trying to get acquired imminently.
Yeah, I think that they've realized that. I mean, even Sonic alone is so valuable as an IP. You know,
by
it's
itself.
yeah, it's like games, movies, comics. Everyone knows Sonic. It's up there with the Mario of the world. It's not
Mhm.
quite on that level, but people know
Mm.
Sonic.
It's
Kids
Oh, yeah.
close
go
though.
crazy
Yeah.
for it.
I think the value of the Sonic IP is exemplified by the fact that, like, I think most people would agree there hasn't. Like, there's far more bad Sonic games than good ones, and they still
Yeah.
sell like crazy. That IP is like undamageable.
Yeah, I'm always shocked whenever a new Sonic game's announced, just how many people seem to be huge fans of Sonic
They're
that
like,
are younger.
yes, let's
Yeah, and they're
go.
like,
This will be
these
the good
people are like,
one.
these are teenagers who have never known the golden age of good Sonic games. They've only ever grown up with Sonic 2006 and all of those sort of games that come after it. They've only ever known the
Well,
Wii
they maybe
games.
played Colors. That wasn't too bad, was it?
No, I guess, but like, yeah, but like, if you played,
But come on.
yeah, but like, what else was at that time? That was, that they were probably playing at the same time. Minecraft was out by that point, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure these kids were playing. Oh, don't hold me to that. But these are the kids that were playing Minecraft that are also somehow really into Sonic, and it just blows my mind every time you see like a new, I don't know, like
You
vocal
know, they
Sonic
all
fan.
played Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, and they just became hooked. Massive fans.
Probably, yeah.
I think it just speaks to how cool Sonic is. People like Sonic. Like
Yeah.
it's the so much of the attraction of the IP is the vibe and the style and the music and like things that you can't take away with a bad game.
The fact that some of the sort of two of the biggest associations I have with Sonic are Chris Chan and weird fetish drawings like inflatable Sonic or Sonic's feet and stuff. Like the fact that IP is still so strong with those things being like looming over it constantly just speaks
That's
to
like
just
a
how
that's like a core part of
wildly
it now
strong.
too, right? Like Sega's like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, whatever. Like
Yeah,
people are this is it. This
I
is
mean,
the
if you
culture.
like
they
Sonic,
tap
you
into the
have to be a
weird
degenerate.
now.
Oh yeah.
Like, did you see the April Fool's joke game? I
Yeah,
haven't
the
played it
murder of
yet. The
Sonic the
murder of
Hedgehog
Sonic the
thing, like
Hedgehog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're in on the meme, right? The Sonic the Hedgehog Twitter account is hilarious.
Is there inflatable
Yep.
Sonics in that? Is
You'll have to
does he
download it and play, Max. I don't know.
All
Yeah,
right, fine.
report back. Let us
As long
know.
as I don't get put on a list, I'll
Well, I can't promise
maybe one
that,
for
but
the Steam Deck show.
It's got like amazing reviews on Steam.
Mm,
It's like seemingly a phenomenal game, even though it was an April Fool's joke.
yeah, that's how you do it
Great
right.
little visual novel.
mhm.
So yeah, we'll see. I think maybe it's a new era for Sega because they've been doing some good stuff lately. So we'll see. We're gonna close things out on a story that I think is pretty much tailored to my interests, but I appreciate the indulgence, boys. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League's rumored delay has actually happened. So we knew that there was rumblings about a delay. The game is now confirmed to release in February 2024, making it, I believe, the farthest out like AAA game with a date at this point, which is kind of nuts. But this was originally rumored about a month ago, I want to say, from a report from Jason Schreier. Now we have the official announcement from Rocksteady that reads, "We have made the tough but necessary decision to take the time needed to work on getting the game to be the best quality experience for players. Thank you to our amazing community for the continued support, patience, and understanding. There's much more to share in the months ahead, and we look forward to seeing you in Metropolis next year." That's all the information we got, right? No confirmation on what exactly is going to be worked on and,
Yeah.
and what they're trying to fix or what have you. Um,
They
but
basically
I mean,
own up
this,
to nothing. They
yeah,
don't
yeah,
say anything about, "Oh, we heard that you fans aren't happy with XYZ." They just say, "We need to make it the best quality experience for players." But what does that mean? Does that mean that they're just gonna fix that they're just working on bug fixes and the game's gonna release in the exact same state it was?
yeah.
Like, people weren't saying the
You're
game looked
correct, Max.
shoddy.
That is exactly what Jason
That's
Schreier
definitely
has
what's going to happen.
reported.
Really?
He said
Oh,
now official, Suicide Squad bumped from May 2023 to February 2024. And again, this delay is to polish the game, not change it.
damn.
It will now be a
Okay.
Yeah.
nearly 9-year gap between Arkham Knight and Suicide Squad.
Then
So the thing
yeah.
that's pretty particularly funny about this, I think, is that from what I've heard from Jason is that they were talking about delaying it before the state of play where it got that really negative reaction. So they knew that the game was not ready to go and they still hit that big marketing beat, which is a
I
really baffling choice
And I
in my
don't
mind.
remember any of the conversations after the state of play being like, that looked like it wasn't running at a 60 FPS. Did anyone notice the texture clipping or anything? It was always
Oh,
just,
no, yeah, it
oh
was
my
all,
god,
"Oh,
the
great,
No,
it's
it's
guns
a
are
what the
boring
game
games as a
is.
yeah.
service," yeah.
And if that's not
Yeah.
what's changing, then I then wha how does it take almost a year to polish something that you're keeping,
We saw a vertical slice in that presentation. The rest of the game could have been a car crash.
it could be a car crash, you are right. That is, I did not know that from Jason. Was that what he reported just now? Is that what he reported
Yeah,
weeks
he
ago?
tweeted that, on April 13th, so
Damn, that knocks all of my, conversation points out about this then. Wow, okay. Then we're just getting
Well, no,
the
I don't
same.
think it does though, right? Because I think it comes back to the one of the points that you wrote down here, Max. Right, was that it's been in development for 6 years. How much can 1 year do to fix the game's issues? It can't. Right, like it can make the game run better. It can make it be a better version of what it is, but it's not going to fundamentally change that this is a games as a service type game. And I think
Yeah.
it speaks to the fact that this game has been in development for a really long time, and that it was probably approved during an era where everybody was chasing Destiny, and it's been delayed and it's been delayed and it's finally coming out, and nobody wants this kind of game anymore. And
They
I don't know that
obviously still
anybody
believe
really
in it.
wanted this kind of game ever, right?
No.
Aside from Destiny. Destiny
It
got it right, and I can't think of another game that has iterated on this and hit. They've all
It's
been
something we're
flops.
being forced to interact with, I guess, in more than it's something people clamor for. People aren't clamoring for more games like this. It's just like, oh, here's a game that I like the visuals, I like the IP, I like whatever. I have to indulge in this to play it.
It's a
All
monkey's
right,
paw.
fine. Yeah. Like, oh, I get to play a new game in the Arkhamverse where you play as the Suicide Squad and you fight the Justice League. Cool. Oh, and it's got granular numbers for each individual item, and it's Boomerang Man has a gun when he's literally got in his name the weapon he should be using. Oh my god. Sorry. Shame.
So I'm gonna pull a question here from
Shame.
the question block. This one comes from one of our Patreon producers, Mr. Zaid Ito, who wrote in and said, "Hey gang, so with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League delayed again, I'm curious enough to ask, does anyone really care? I'm sure there's someone out there who's disappointed with yet another delay. But come on, was anybody really excited to begin with? I guess I'm really wondering, does anyone really care about live service games besides the big boys like Destiny and Fortnite? And do any of you guys play any live service games? Can't wait to hear what you got to say on the matter.
I
P.S.
do.
How's the Switch Pro rumors looking, Max?
Luckily, very quiet. I'm glad of that. That has been we haven't spoken about it in a long time. Can I just say that I don't think, yeah, whatever.
For me, it's the
Champion.
Elden Ring DLC prediction that it's coming out in June. I'm really loving that one.
All
That's
of your
not gonna
predictions,
happen.
both of you. I just want to be clear, both of you. All of your predictions, trash. I'm ready to win again.
Oh, no,
All right.
Marathon's
All right.
getting announced.
Let's answer Zaid's question.
So
here.
before I know Steve's got some stuff to say, I just want to quickly say I don't think that at the point this was revealed and the point that it was, because people are talking about it a lot as it's in the Arkhamverse, it's about this. They sort of I think they've never explicitly said it's like a live service thing until we saw the first screenshots come out where you had the menus, and then we saw the first gameplay at that state of play, and
I
it
think
became
everybody
very apparent.
thought that's what it was, and then we
We've made
saw it,
assumptions.
and it's like, oof, I don't
But I
know
think
about all
when
this.
when you're Rocksteady and you're releasing a game that you've clearly said is in the Arkhamverse, whereas Gotham Knights isn't in the Arkhamverse, you expect that. You expect what Arkham Knight was, or Arkham City was, or Arkham Asylum was. Single player, um, single player, story driven, a game like that. You don't expect them to do what Gotham Knights was doing, which they explicitly said wasn't part of the Arkhamverse, and it was a completely different kind of game.
It's also like, why did they put out two games like this?
Hmm.
Right? Like, it's like, why did Gotham Knights just came out and it's like this exact same type of game,
And
only
they
this is like obviously more of a shooter, but like, it's
yeah,
like,
and they aren't
what are we
related.
doing?
They're
Like,
not
why?
related. They just happen to come from the same IP, and I think we have a lot of this with Spider-Man at the moment as well, where Spider-Man fans with films are supposed to be aware of the continuity of Into the Spider-Verse, the Spider-Man games, all 3 of the Spider-Man movies for the MCU, and then also all whether it was 5 of the previous Spider-Man games. You have to be aware of all of that continuity to be able to engage correctly with Spider-Man at the moment. Same with Batman.
I don't agree with
the
that.
Batman, Joker, like you have to it's hard to keep track of, oh, there's a new Spider-Man film out. Okay, cool. What continuity is it? And blah, blah, blah. And to have like Batman games that are very similar in style and one closer in style to the other, but the one that's further away in style is the one that's actually related to the Arkham games that you know and love. It's just very confusing. Sorry, Steve, you had a
Okay.
point and I leapt.
No, Pete, you follow up on Max's first.
I don't have enough time to untangle that Spider-Man comment. I think it's far more simple than than you're giving it credit for. But I agree.
For us,
I agree with your point about having Gotham Knights feel like that feels like to me, at least marketing wise, I felt more like that seemed to be in the Arkham universe than this
it's
would,
literally got the
right?
word knights in it, which Arkham Knight was the one that it ended with, and Batman's
Right.
dead in it, like Batman dies at the end of Arkham Knight. Like all of these things low on top of each other.
But
Red's,
but
yeah.
but I think you take all that out of it. It's just like, why would you put two seemingly competing products out at the same time with the same IP?
I
That's
think
just
it's a case
so.
that that they were delayed and they just happened to overlap on one another, and it was just like, well,
But like, why
guess
would
we'll
you
They
even
don't
compete
affect
with
greenlight
each
both
other.
of those projects? Like I just think
Mm.
that seems like such an insane choice to me. It's like
Were they both
if this
published by
is
Warner Brothers?
yeah, of
Yeah.
course they are. Batman is Warner Brothers property. It's Warner Brothers. What WB Montreal is the studio that did Gotham Knights, and they were the
Oh, and it was
studio that
Avalanche
did
Software, wasn't it? That did Arkham Knights. Oh no, they did
no,
the Hogwarts
no.
one.
Avalanche is the Hogwarts Legacy studio. And yeah, and then it's Rocksteady is also owned by them, right? So it's like you have three of I mean, I think it's crazy inherently that you have three big studios and you have two of them working on the same kind of game with the same IP. Like, why not have one of them make a more traditional and again, if Rocksteady wanted to make the Suicide Squad game, not that they were forced to make it, right? Say that was what the studio wanted to be working on, fine. Have have WB Montreal make a more traditional single player game, right?
Mhm.
And it doesn't even have to be Batman. You could have one be Batman and one be, the Suicide Squad or whatever, fine. But like, there's also the entire library of DC characters that you could do something with. And it just seems crazy to me to put out two games as a service when I feel like the writing's been on the wall. It's been shown that that model is not successful unless you're one of the really big dogs. And I
Yeah.
think that's already a tough sell to be like, yeah, we're going to come along and compete with Destiny. Let alone when it's tied to an IP. It's like, what if you don't like Batman? What if you don't like the Avengers? Are you going to play this game? Probably not then, right? Like, and if you do, is this the game that you wanted? Probably not, right? You want a single player. You want Spider-Man. That's what you want, but
Mhm.
with a different character. And it just feels like, yeah, to take it back to Zaid's question, it's like, I'm sure that there is a contingency of players that are interested in this game based on what it is and like just like this kind of like looter shooter kind of thing. But it's like, are those players going to stick around for more than a couple weeks? Or is this going to be a flash in the pan game that you play for a couple weeks and then you move on to the next one, or you go back to
Yeah,
the game that you actually play?
this is a
You go
pick up
back to
when it's on
Destiny.
sale game for a lot of people. I
Yeah,
think.
exactly. So it's like, I don't know, like, does anyone really care about live service games? Yes.
Yes, I do.
But I think to Zaid's point with the big boys, right? Like Destiny or Fortnite in another genre, there's only so many that can be supported at the same time, right? Like if these games need to have massive audiences and they need to be in development for half a decade plus, they need to, you know, come out and have a huge player base and then maintain that player base for a very long time to be profitable or to be seen as worth it, then yeah, no.
I
Like
think I think you can do live service in a way that isn't an MMO. Like Bungie even calls Destiny 2 an MMO at this point. It's not.
it is
That's
one.
not what I consider live service anymore. Live service is any game with any live element. I play live service games. One of my favorite games of all time, Hitman, is a live service game, and they do it very successfully. I'm constantly going in there. There's constantly new content. The new freelancer mode is all based on live service stuff, and it was like a free mode that was added. There was always like elusive targets, which is like their live service element, where every single month it's a new target that gets added in. That stuff really, really works for me. Same with Diablo 4. That's a live service game. It's going to continually add end game content, but there is that single player component that I can play, and I can just play that and not have to interact with any of the live service stuff if I don't want to. I think if they can do that stuff well with Justice League, and they can demonstrate that the live service stuff, if you don't want to interact with any of that stuff, it doesn't matter. If you want to play the single player and just interact with the story and get that Justice League story and explore wherever it's set. Where's it set?
Metropolis.
Metropolis. If you want to explore Metropolis, then you can do, and you can do that on your own if you want to. And maybe they get rid of some of the live service elements that people had a visceral reaction to at the state of play. I
I
don't
just
think
think it's
that's
too
what's going to
late.
happen, though. It's way
Yeah,
too late for that for them to
you
change it. So
again, it's just like I don't know that this like is. I just don't know, man. It's like I feel like when you're gonna do a game like this and like attach it to an IP, it's like it just feels like such a you have to be in such a Venn diagram to want to play this, right? And it's like even me as somebody who like is a comic book fan, I like Batman, right? Like I don't really want to play as the Suicide Squad. Like that's not really a thing I want. I don't really want to play a game where I'm playing as people who use guns and fighting people with like I want to have powers. Like that's the thing that's the thing I
Yeah.
want.
The game is
I'd be a
capable of that, though.
million times. What's that?
The game is capable of that. There are members of the Suicide Squad that do have powers. There are people we've seen
I
in the films
guess.
that have powers. You know, the playing as the Shark would be fun. Playing as Boomerang Man with a boomerang would be fun in a way. Having all
But
these
like,
characters
would it?
just
I
use
don't know
guns.
because like again, like Captain Boomerang has a boomerang. That's
Captain
basically
Boomerang.
going to operate like a gun. And
It
like
could
King
operate like
Shark
it could
is a
operate like
big.
the
He's a big, strong guy. So like, what? Like,
yeah, that's variety. You have the 4 different characters. You know, you could have one of your guys, and the boomerang could act like Kratos' axe in a way, where it's like more melee-based combat, and then you have the sort of the stronger punching shit around combat.
it
You know,
did
they
yeah,
look
I
like
mean, like,
that though from the
no,
presentation.
and that's the
it
thing,
doesn't.
though,
That's what
man.
I'm
It's
saying.
like,
It's not that game, but that there is it's capable of being.
yeah, I get what you're saying. Where like, if it was a totally different kind of game, it could be cool. But it's also like, I don't know, dog. Like, maybe just make another Batman game.
Yeah,
You know,
unsalvageable.
like maybe that's just what we wanted.
R.I.P. Kevin Conroy.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, the
And
fact
I
that
don't know.
this is gonna be his last ever performance,
Performance.
right?
Yeah,
He's gonna be
is a
stuck
shame.
in this
In
seemingly
this.
terrible game.
And it's, I hope it's good. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that it comes out and I'm excited about it. But I can't see that. I really can't. And yeah, I mean, you know, to answer your question, like, do I play any live service games? I mean, like off
Marvel
and
Snap.
on sometimes.
Play Marvel
Yeah,
Snap
like
all
I
the
like
time,
Marvel
eh?
Snap. Love Marvel Snap. I play that. You know, I get into them once in a while for sure. Like, there's plenty of
Well, you
live
used to
service games
always
I
play
very much
League.
like. Yeah, I was a big League guy back in the day. I had my moment with Pokemon Unite a couple years ago. I played Multiverses last year, right? Like, um, I think it works when it works, but like, we just talked about Multiverses a couple weeks ago, right? Like, I loved that game, and it's already like dead, and they're having to try and like put it on life support and save it. And like, I, there's been how many Knockout City got closed down this year?
Is that another
What
Warner
was the
Brothers like failed live service game then?
Knockout? Oh,
Multiverses. Is that-
Multiverses. Yeah, Multiverses is. Yeah. I mean, knock on wood, it's not, but like probably. And you had Knockout City was the dodgeball game that just got shut down. There was the one Rumbleverse that was the wrestling battle royale from Epic that was only up for like 6 months. Like, I think that, and I said this a couple weeks ago, I think that this last couple big, like between Avengers, Gotham Knights, this, like all these games getting shut down, I think this kind of games as a service game is going to go away. And not totally, right? Like Destiny's still going to be around, Fortnite's still going to be around. The big dogs are going to weather the storm because they have that IP recognition, they have a baked in audience, but I don't think that a lot of publishers and developers are going to be running to put out a game like this right now because I think it's a super hostile environment for them. When like nobody has extra money to go around, people's budgets are a little bit tighter. Are you really going to jump in and do a season pass on a game you've never played before that might not be around in a couple months when you could just keep playing Destiny or you could go pick up a single player game? I don't know. So yeah, I mean, I think this game is gonna be a flop, and I
Yeah.
think that really sucks for Rocksteady,
Yeah.
and that like it's gonna be 15 years before we get a good game from them again.
This is a game that's
That's
cost
if they
like
ever make
60
another game.
million. Someone did the math. It's like $60 million in just man hours alone, and that is a lot
They're
of
never
money
making that back.
to lose.
Absolutely
No,
never
and
making
Warner
that
Brothers
back.
has to just swallow that. And I think this is going to be similar to what we said about Redfall before, where the people at WB are going to go, "What went wrong?" And it's just not going to, work out well for them in any way.
The answer is not satisfying, right? It's like
No.
we made a bet and it went poorly.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know, right? We already know they were trying to sell off their games division not that long ago, right? And keep the IP. I
Yeah,
wouldn't, I mean,
I I kind of feel like this is maybe the nail in the coffin for Rocksteady, because that's a big old chunk of change to kind of not write off as a tax write off.
I bet you they get sold. I don't think they'll close the studio. I think they'll sell the studio. I think the name still means something, and I could see another publisher acquiring them. But again, it's like they're going to sell all these studios without the IP that they're attached to. So it's like, I don't know.
Mhm.
But I think that is probably what's going to happen shorter than, I mean, like maybe the success of Hogwarts Legacy and Avalanche putting out something that finally did well um, will slow that roll a little bit and they'll think twice about it. But I don't know. Like, it's like they've been,
Possible. I mean, they could go down the Marvel Games route where they're
I
just
think
like,
that's the way to go is you license it out and you sell the studios off to whomever will buy them. And then you license your IP and you make partnerships rather than having to run studios and take on the financial risk that they're going to put out a flop after 9 years of development.
yeah. The only things that they seem to be putting out that are consistently well received and profitable for them constantly is the Lego games. And other than that, nothing else seems to really land for Warner Brothers.
Yeah. I mean, it's been years, right? Like it's been a really long time. And a lot of the games they've put out, since Arkham Knight have just like really not performed. Even if they were received okay, like
Yeah, but
Avalanche of the
even
Mad Max game.
the Lord of the Rings games, the Middle Earth games, they haven't done well either. They're Warner Brothers games.
Yep. The first one did okay, and then the second one obviously didn't do well enough to warrant another one.
Yeah.
So here we are. But anyway, yeah, it's a bummer. Rocksteady is a couple years ago a studio, or I guess at this point a decade ago, a studio I would have listed among my favorites, and it's been quite some time, and even Arkham Knight didn't really land for me. So, it's like it's since Arkham City that they put out a game that I think is, that lives up to the name and doesn't feel like this one's going to. And that's a huge disappointment. But
Yeah.
I think it's just a sign of change in times.
What a shame.
What a shame indeed. Well, if you guys want to write in and let us know what you think about this or any of the other stories that we talked about today, remember, you can hit us up at questions@flipscreen.games. You can head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you'll find links to our Discord where the conversation keeps rolling between episodes. You can go become a Patreon supporter. You can write in for next week's show. However you choose to get involved, we appreciate you and hope you'll head over there and click on some links. It certainly goes a long way in helping us out, and most of them won't cost you a nickel. So go over there and show your support however you can. However you do choose to do that, thanks for tuning into the show. And for the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Max. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.